All right, hell of a day for you guys here at the Young Turks. It's a Monday show. We've got a ton of news for you guys, even some sports because we had an unreal Super Bowl last night. I'm going to talk about that just a little bit in the beginning here. And then, of course, there's a political angle as well with Breitbart chiming in on their thoughts. Oh, God help us. That's coming up. But you just saw Dan Rather. We got the Young Turks now. On Rebel headquarters, former governor of Alabama, Don Siegelman. He was basically a political prisoner in this country, and it's an amazing story. So we're going to take the whole Rebel headquarters, discuss the saga of Don Siegelman, and he'll be on with us to tell us all about it. Don't miss that. And then we've got a post game for the members, and then also for the members live. You'll get to watch my interview of Kyle Kalinske on the issue of Russia. Oh no, the discussion is upon us. He will take the position that the Russia investigation is overhyped. I will take the position that it is overhyped but important. So it is not a debate, it is a discussion. Kyle Kalinske is also part of the TYT network. He does Secular Talk. It's a wonderful show. You guys should check it out. But if you care about that Russia discussion, 6 o'clock tonight, we do it live. To become a member, tytnetwork.com/join. And thank you for making all those shows possible. Now let's go over here and talk a little bit of sports and then get into the politics of it. Okay. The Super Bowl last night between the Eagles and the Patriots might have been the greatest game ever played. There, I said it. Now it's out there. I'm not talking about just Super Bowls, and in order to be the greatest Super Bowl, that's a hell of a thing right there. You had the Steelers-Cardinals game from a bunch of years back, which was amazing. The James Harrison run back and forth, that game went. You had, of course, the Patriots with the amazing comeback last year, which no one thought could be topped. The Patriots-Seahawks game from a couple years ago. 35-31, Pittsburgh versus Dallas back in 1979. And in terms of overall NFL games, the legendary Chargers-Dolphins game in the Super Bowl in the 1980s. I hear you on all of that, but my God, last night was a hell of a game, and I would argue, yes, the greatest game ever played. So here's my reasoning. Look, the Falcons had a huge lead at the end of, in the middle and towards the end of last year's Super Bowl, and the Patriots did one of the greatest comebacks you've ever seen. Patriots have done some of the most stunning upsets and have suffered some of the most stunning upsets in Super Bowl history. But those were one-sided affairs. The Falcons did everything right in the first half. The Patriots did everything right in the second half. In this game, both teams, certainly offensively, but I could make an argument that the offenses just overwhelmed otherwise good defenses, played spectacularly throughout. There was only one punt in the game. That's unbelievable. The Eagles punted once, and that's it. The Patriots never punted. And that is relevant to the story because the most important part was it was a title fight from round one all the way to the end. Punch after punch. It was Ali Frazier. And neither side relented. They both played like champions. Over 1,100 yards overall in the game. Nick Foles was one of the best QB performances ever in a Super Bowl. He's in the top 6 in terms of QB rating, but I think it went beyond that. It was spectacularly clutch. Not only throwing for touchdowns, but obviously famously now catching a touchdown pass as well. And do I have to bother saying that was the best performance by a backup quarterback in Super Bowl history? Of course, it was one of the best performances, period. He beat the legendary Tom Brady at his own game, including, of course, the most famous play that now hopefully a lot of you have seen already, where there was a trick play on 4th and goal. First of all, going for it on 4th and goal, amazing. Courageous, exactly the right move, the move that I scream into my TV they should make all the time but never do, but they did, and under the most intense pressure in a Super Bowl at the end of a half. And almost any other coach would have kicked a field goal instead, but Peterson went for it. And not only that, secondarily, they did a trick play. Amazing curves, number 2 and number 3. They did a play where the quarterback caught the ball, which was exactly what the Patriots tried earlier in the game, but Tom Brady had alligator armed it. Okay, look, Brady doesn't like getting hit, and the Eagles hit him and hit him a lot in the first half. Great credit to the Patriots offensive line in the second half. That incredible Eagles defense couldn't get to him all second half, with the obvious exception of the gigantic play at the end where they got to Brady and made him fumble. So, the Eagles defense, I know they give up 33 points, but they played strong, they played hard. I know the Patriots defense gave up 41 points, but and they don't have the best of defenses, but they also played hard. And I never sensed choking from either side. I never sensed let up on either side, and they went round for round. And then finally on Doug Peterson, arguably, look, I'm declaring in second declaration.
I mean, one of those moves.
That's not it. That might also be true, but I meant this. Doug Peterson, best coaching performance in the Super Bowl ever. He not only went for it on 4th and goal and delivered at the end of the half on that trick play, he went for it on 4th down late in the game in his own territory. I know thousands of cowardly coaches who would have punted. It is not the right move. The right move is to be courageous. The Eagles played without fear. That is how you play the Patriots. You want to be a champion, you got to fight like a champion, and you got to play like a champion. And they did. They assumed they were better than the Patriots. And all along the way, as JR said on TYT Sports afterwards, they punched them in the mouth. So JR, Michael Schur, Ricky Strom, and I did a post game immediately following there after the game where we went nuts as everyone was going nuts. That's on TYT Sports, youtube.com/TYT Sports. We'll have the link down below on YouTube for you guys and comment section on Facebook. By the way, there's an eye in the corner, and if you're watching on YouTube, and if you go over that eye, that'll also always give you the links. All you got to do is click on it. So check out all of TYT Sports coverage of the Super Bowl. But that was amazing. And by the way, credit to the Patriots, just because they lost didn't mean they played poorly. They also played like champions. But now, without further ado, I must say,
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Down goes the Patriots. Down goes the Patriots. Down goes the Patriots. And they weren't going down willingly. It was a heroic effort by the Eagles to bring them down. Best game ever in a Super Bowl, arguably the best game ever, period, in the NFL. Best coaching performance in a Super Bowl, arguably the best coaching performance overall in a season, playoffs and Super Bowl by Peterson, and arguably the best quarterbacking performance ever by all people, Nick Foles, which goes to show you Doug Peterson is a hell of a coach. Okay. While you're at TYT Sports, you might want to try to find that prediction I made of who would go to the Super Bowl in week 3. Oh, was it the Eagles? Did I say the Eagles? Huh, funny. What can I do? All right, let's get on to politics. Okay. So Breitbart had a unique take on the Super Bowl. Did they care that it was one of the best football games ever played? If they did, they didn't really talk much about it. Performances, Eagles, Patriots fans, no. They had a different take. Here's a tweet that they put up and later deleted where they said, this is a hypothetical conversation happening in the future. They show players kneeling there. They did not kneel during the anthem of the Super Bowl. That's an old picture that they used. And they have this fictional conversation. Grandpa, what's a Super Bowl? Well, little Mohammed, back when the kuffar ran things, they stitched up filthy pigskins, moved them around painted lines, and shoved each other. There was secular music and alcohol, a very haram affair. What does the Super Bowl have to do with Muslims? And get a load of the lunatics. Oh, you see, later, when the Muslims take over America, they will ban football because it is haram. When are the Muslims taking over America? Do you have any evidence that Muslim Americans are anti-football? And let alone the fact that if like, oh, the big thing here is like, oh my God, could you imagine if there were more Muslims than Christians? How terrible that would be. And why, again, would that be so terrible? No, but don't call them bigots. Don't call them, because they get very touchy about that. Those snowflakes melt right away when you point out the obvious bigotry of that. Okay, can you imagine if they did it to another religion? Hey, Shmuley, what happened to the filthy, non-kosher game of football, etc.? People are like, what? What are you doing? That's obviously the most anti-Semitic thing we've ever seen. But when you do it to Muslims, a little bit more acceptable, unfortunately, in right-wing circles. But apparently they thought better of it as well, so they deleted it. But I'm just amused more than, outraged that, I mean, really, Breitbart, is anyone surprised? I'm thinking I've run out of outrage for Breitbart. I'm amused though that this is their fears. Like, oh my God, could you imagine if the Muslims took over? They would call football haram and we wouldn't be able to play it anymore. And then Mohamed Sanu would be MVP every year. For Cocoa Puffs. Okay, we move forward. So I went to New Orleans over the weekend. This is a fun random story. And I went for the Unrigged Summit where we try to get money out of politics and a lot of the groups who work on that. By the way, not only progressive groups, but also conservative groups, because there are a lot of great conservatives in the country who want to get money out of politics or who want to do campaign finance reform in different ways, because like most Republican voters, they understand that our system has become completely corrupted, rigged, if you will, and obviously President Trump ran on that. He didn't do much about it afterwards, if you ask me, or check any facts. But he did at least run on that, and Republican voters don't like the corruption any more than progressive voters do. They're very right about that. In fact, 93% of Americans say that politicians serve their donors and not their voters. But I went to the conference, and that was wonderful, and we had a good and constructive panel about the 28th Amendment. Don't worry, we're going to fix it. wolf-pack.com. So go to that. Go to wolf-pack.com/join to become part of Wolfpack and become a member. Go to wolf-pack.com/states to see what state you can get involved in and volunteer. So that was all great. But as I was going around New Orleans, Mardi Gras had begun. It's not the main weekend of Mardi Gras, but the first weekend. And there are lots of people in the street, so I ran into a lot of people just walking around having nothing to do with the conference. And lots of people said wonderful things. A couple of people were convinced that Ben Mankiewicz is awesome and would be fun to hang out with. I'd love to hear that. Lots of nice things that people said about John Iadarola and Anna Kasparian and Jimmy Dore and Michael Schur and J.R. Jackson and the whole group. It was wonderful to hear. Thank you guys. But what I was more intrigued by were the haters. So there's two people who happen to be conservatives who watch the show because of debates I've been in or the election night coverage, which they love. And the guy was an older gentleman I was sitting next to, and he said he loves watching that election night and watching us get depressed. And bless his heart, he got every right to do that. Go forward, watch it for yourself. Watch us on next election night, see what happens. tytnetwork.com/live. Anyway, but you know what? We wound up having a civil conversation for about 20 minutes or so, because I wound up having a time in the day which I normally wouldn't, and it was great. It was refreshing. And you know what happened? We agree on 75% of the issues. So, because there's all these talking points on the right, and all they got is talking points. So like, money is speech. I'm like, wait. Have the corruption, do you think the politicians are corrupt? He's like, yeah, totally. But I think the way to solve it is smaller government. Okay, you want to end the wars? Actually, yeah, I mean, the Pentagon is a little out of control. Good, we agree on that. Hey, I'm pro-choice. I think that means smaller government. He's like, well, I get that argument, and on and on and on. And once you get past the talking points, there is no boogeyman on the left. If there is, it certainly isn't here, where we say, oh my God, wouldn't it be great if we had a giant government that ran all parts of your life? No, we want a government that serves the people and not the donors. It's not that complicated. Okay, then second guy did what happens from time to time, going through the rain in Mardi Gras, and he sees me, he's like, hey, Cenk Uygur, Ben Shapiro ate you. I mean, ate your lunch. Ate your lunch. There was a similar tweet that guy's now deleted from a bunch of months ago where he's like, Ben Shapiro did this and this to you. I'm like, I don't think that's what it means what you think it means. But I am amused that there's all these people who believe that Ben Shapiro somehow ate me. Okay, so that's fun for everybody. No harm in that. You like Ben, you like Crowder. God bless your heart. I think you're wrong, but that's all right. Which leads me to my final point here, which is two guys came up to me, and one of them said he grew up in a conservative Catholic household, another one in an evangelical household. One of them said, look, he just wanted to test out all different points of view, which makes him open-minded and wonderful, etc. The other one said that he came in as a hater, like, oh yeah, loser, Young Turks, I don't watch that, loser. They're gonna be wrong. I hate you, someone destroyed you. I don't know why, I just was told to say that over and over again. So, and then they came in, you know what they found out? Now this is according to them, and you wanna believe me, great. You don't wanna believe me, right wing, they're like, oh yeah, no way, but that didn't happen. That's all right, God bless your heart. I don't care if you believe me. I'm telling for folks what really happened. And this is what I love. They said, I came in, a guy from the Catholic background, and said, I was like, well, I got a point on that one. And then the next one, I was like, well, that was not so bad. And then by the third one, I was like, God damn it, I think I'm a progressive. He said he's now a progressive. Both of them said they went from conservative to realizing that in reality, the other side's been lying to them, and they looked it up for themselves. They even Googled it, if you will, and found out that we were right, and found out that we're fighting for the little guy, and the other guys are trying to protect the rich and the powerful at the expense of the average American, and they became progressives, and they said that we changed their lives. Look, man, I don't know how many of those stories are out there, but I love that. That makes everything worth it. So you guys keep on sending the haterade. We'll turn it into lemonade. Come on, send the haterade. Keep sending more people because the right wing's like, oh yeah, why is the Young Turks that? Then you control them. Keep coming, brother. Keep coming, and we'll keep turning them into progressives. You couldn't do us a bigger favor. Okay, now that was just a fun story from my trip. I've got stories about how, in fact, the Republicans are saying that you should be thrilled about these tax cuts, but I'm going to give you the facts. What did you get? What did the top 1% get? Later in the program, when Anna comes, we're also going to talk about a new idea they have for paid family leave. Now, is your employer going to pay for it? Is the government going to pay for it? No. The Republican idea is you pay for it. That's not really paid family leave. Anyway, it's even worse than that. We'll explain it in a little bit.
A progressive future requires a different kind of financial industry. I'm Joe Sandberg. I'm co-founder of Aspiration.com, an online financial firm you can fall in love with. The American financial industry came to serve itself and profit. I believe in a different path for business. Business should be about serving people, and that profit is a byproduct of serving people well. Aspiration.com is about our customers and our movement. We use what we call pay what's fair. You, as the customer, have the power to choose your fee. We trust you that if we do a good job for you, you'll choose to pay us. 10% of the fees that you choose to pay, we give to charity. Many of you are passionate about the environment and reversing the effects of climate change, but many of you also may be banking at a big institution that funds things like Dakota Access. It made clear what's inherently broken about Wells Fargo and so much of the financial industry. These organizations are obsessed not with serving people, but with serving themselves and their profit. You can stop DOPL by taking your money out of banks that fund DOPL and put your money into financial institutions like Aspiration.com. You don't have to sacrifice your values to do well financially. And that's why our motto at Aspiration is do well, do good. We have a popular fossil fuel-free, firearm-free, private prison-free, sustainable investing fund at Aspiration called the Redwood Fund. And the minimum is just $100. The power and future is yours to determine. The choices you make with your money matter. And that's why we built Aspiration, because there's a different, better way to deliver both great banking and investing services that meet your needs and also match your values.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Edwin just made a great point. He's our stage manager. Last backup quarterback to win a Super Bowl, Tom Brady. When he was up against the Rams, he had started the year as Drew Bledsoe's backup. So how's that for full circle? All right, Heiserberg writes in, hey, Cenk, if you want to cover sports, talk about your boy Aaron Wysocki's cousin. He's one of the top disc golfers in the world. Really? Who knew that? Wow. Aaron Wysocki is the commanders of the armies of the East. He is the head of the Pittsburgh office and head of publishing and does social media for us. So I'll have to check that out. Okay, Aaron and I got to talk about that. Maybe we'll feature the Wysocki cousin on TYT Sports. Not that down writes in, Cenk, it was an awesome game and thank you for not singing Fly, Eagles, Fly, LOL. I forgot to show you guys the Eagles fans carrying poles around. They just took off like light poles and started carrying them around Philly. You got that? Can you show the video 8 real quick? You might be confused by that. Number one, it's Philly. They'll tear down anything. Number two, that's kind of a Philly tradition. If you remember in a post game for the members, I told about how we tore down the goalposts after Penn won an Ivy League championship, even things like that don't matter. Anyway, we carried it through the streets and then threw it in the Schuylkill River. It's a tradition. You got to do what you got to do. When in Philly, you know. Ed says, I love TYT Sports. Well, thank you. YouTube.com/TYT Sports. The Mathematician says, only conservatives would actually try to make a racist liberal conspiracy out of the effing Super Bowl. Seriously? I know, right? Gabby says, does Breitbart have to be racist about every effing thing? Because it really seems like nothing is safe over there. And then finally, Derek Martin says, Cenk, please tell me you have a segment dedicated to Eli and Odell's Dirty Dancing commercial, greatest commercial ever. Well, look, we thought about doing it, but I didn't want the Super Bowl to take over the show. Another thing we could talk about is the Ford commercial with Martin Luther King's speech over it. Was it Dodge? Oh, okay. Shows you how much I pay attention to the ads. I was like, they were really trying to have MLK sell cars? And then, of course, somebody put it to what MLK actually said about car advertising. That didn't play well for Dodge. Okay, he's the guy who organized for poor people. Not a big fan of capitalism. All right, anyway, let's go over here. So, of course, you remember Donald Trump's State of the Union, where he said many outrageous things, and of course, Democrats did not stand up and applaud many of those things. There was a lot of demagoguery, targeting immigrants, et cetera. Some Democrats stood up from time to time, like Senator Joe Manchin, and he went on Fox and Friends to brag about it the day after. But not a lot of reasons to rejoice if you're a Democrat with Donald Trump's draconian proposals. But Trump thinks not applauding the president is unacceptable. But of course, he's Trump, so he's going to go way, way past that. Listen.
No, it's bad energy. You're up there. You've got half the room going totally crazy, wild. They loved everything. They want to do something great for our country. And you have the other side, even on positive news, really positive news like that, they were like death and un-American. Un-American. Somebody said treasonous. I mean, yeah, I guess why not? You know, can we call that treason? Why not? I mean, they certainly didn't seem to love our country very much.
Why not? So were all the Republicans treasonous when they refused to stand up for Obama's State of the Union? That's one reason why not if you're a Republican. If they don't do a standing ovation for everything President Bernie Sanders says, is that going to be treasonous? Looking forward to it. Can't wait. Why not? Why not? This guy doesn't understand the country. It's so ironic because in reality, he's un-American. The other side doesn't have to applaud you. You're not a dictator, you're not a king, you're the president. If you have ideas they like infrastructure, they will applaud that. If you have ideas where you do demagoguery against immigrants and compare them to MS-13 and killers and murderers, they don't have to applaud that. That is actually very American. That is their freedom of speech. That is their right to act out as the representatives of the people who put them into that office, who are not big fan of yours. But he doesn't get it. He's authoritarian by nature, and so he thinks, well, if they don't stand up and applaud me, well, then I guess, why not treason? I guess it's treasonous and un-American. Donald Trump, you might be the president, but you don't represent us, and you're not what America is. So don't be so arrogant as to think that even the president is America. No, we all have different opinions, and not standing up and applauding you doesn't mean that we don't love America. Part of the reason they didn't stand up to applaud you is the exact opposite reason, because they do love America and they believe in the idea of America and the American dream, the dream that you spoke so forcefully against that night. But overall, you get a sense of the man and you get a sense of his inclination. I mean, to say that anyone who doesn't applaud you is treasonous would have previously been considered unimaginable and monstrous. But we're so used to monstrous with Donald Trump, we just take it in stride. Oh yeah, the president says anyone who doesn't applaud him maybe committed treason. Like you could say he's joking around, but that is not a proper way to joke around, saying the other party is un-American and treasonous simply because they didn't applaud you. By the way, he was partly bragging earlier in the speech about the stock market. How's that working out for you, Donald? You rode Obama's coattails in, and the unemployment numbers going down just like they were under Obama. We showed you the charts, stock market going up just like they were under Obama. But what did you do? You got greedy and you dug and you dug and you gave away all that money to your rich donors. And we told you that it was overinflated. We told you about the bubble, and over the last 2 days, that bubble has begun to burst. So if there is a Trump bump, well, it's now bumpy days for him overall, and that bump is headed straight down like everything else that Donald Trump has ever touched in his career. Okay, now we move to the actual facts of what the Republicans are proposing. Okay. So the Republicans passed their tax bill, and now leaves a giant hole in the deficit, about $1.5 trillion. They said that they cared about balancing the budget. They proved that that was nothing but a lie. They don't mind putting trillions of dollars of debt onto the country as long as it goes to their rich donors and their corporate donors. That's exactly what they did. But they also talk about trickle down. Hey, don't worry, they might have gotten millions of dollars, but maybe some of it will trickle down on your head. So it turns out a woman wrote in on Twitter saying it did, and Paul Ryan wanted to celebrate it. Okay, well, fair is fair. Let's find out what the facts are. Ryan says in a tweet that is now deleted, as you'll see why, as secretary to public high school in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, said she was pleasantly surprised her pay went up $1.50 a week. She said that will more than cover her Costco membership for the year. Wow. Costco membership, apparently $60. Congratulations. So that's not $1.50 per hour or even per day. That's $1.50 extra per week. Wow, you're so generous, Paul Ryan. Thank you so much. We appreciate you trickling all over us. So that's what we get. I'll get to what they get in a second. But even Nancy Pelosi woke up to respond to this. Here's her tweet saying Paul Ryan deleted his embarrassing tweet of a blatant admission because he and the Republicans don't want you to know the truth. The GOP tax scam is a gift to corporate America and the top 1% at your expense. He also doesn't want you to know he got $500,000 from the Koch family, which is absolutely true. Look at Nancy Pelosi fighting back. Glad to see the battle is joined. So I told you last week that yes, immediately after the tax bill passed, the Koch brothers sent $500,000 to a Paul Ryan PAC. Job well done, way to deliver for us. That bill has billions, not millions, billions of dollars of savings for the Koch family alone, let alone the billions that it saves the Walton family, let alone the trillions that it saves corporate, multinational corporations. But you get $1.50 a week. And he sent that out like, hey, we told you we deliver for you. So $1.50 a week for you. How much for the top 1%? Forbes reports average for the top 1% will be an extra $51,000 in 2018. Do you even make $51,000? I know a lot of you don't. $51,000 extra in tax deductions for the top 1%. But you get $1.50 a week. Shouldn't you celebrate? Keith Ellison wrote, Wells Fargo, fresh off of defrauding millions of Americans, gets $3.4 billion. So you get $1.50 a week. Wells Fargo gets $3.4 billion in tax breaks. It's for the average American. And you know, others wrote this too. They pointed out that Paul Ryan, I think John Favreau did, a former speechwriter for Barack Obama. Paul Ryan probably thought, like, what? He genuinely didn't understand how insulting that is. He's like, what, I gave you the crumbs. What did you think I was gonna give you? Of course the billions of dollars were gonna go to my donors. I gave you crumbs and you're still complaining? As I believe someone else pointed out, for $1.50 a week, you can't even buy cake. So they're a little bit worse than Marie Antoinette. Well, if they're having trouble with bread, why don't they eat cake? Well, good luck to them at $1.50 extra a week. And then finally, the person most jumping into the fray in this case was Randy Bryce, understandably so, because he's running against Paul Ryan in that seat. Paul Ryan thinking about retiring, a little scared of the competition and which way this election might go. His opponent is Randy Bryce, who's also, by the way, a Justice Democrat, and he tweeted out this. Moments ago, Representative Ryan deleted this tweet after we told him just how out of touch he was. Show Paul Ryan what you think of his tax bill. Chip in $1.50 to help us repeal and replace Ryan permanently this November. And we'll put those links down below in the description box as well. Randy Bryce, an iron worker known as Iron Stash, and Paul Ryan is not coming for him, as it turns out. He's coming for Paul Ryan. So Paul Ryan better save up all the Koch brothers money. He's gonna need it because he might be in for a world of hurt because he has no idea what his constituents are up to, the state of affairs in his district or anywhere in this country, and he thinks you should celebrate their crumbs. I don't think that people will be in much of a celebratory mood in November. Okay, now more context into the tax policy and the results that have flowed from it. So Donald Trump has been bragging about the Republican tax plan, as have all the Republicans. They have been absolutely joyous about it. Now, for decades, I heard them talking about balanced budgets. Apparently, they never meant it. And that is, when people ask me why I left the Republican Party, that's one of the reasons I give. I said, look, I was a fiscal conservative. In a lot of ways, I'm still a fiscal conservative. And I just thought that they meant it when they said they were going to balance budgets, and it turns out they never do. Do you know who the last Republican president is to have left office with a balanced budget? Dwight Eisenhower. They never balance budgets. They have no interest in doing that. And they proved it in this case by passing that monstrous tax bill for the rich. By the year 2027, 83% of the benefits will go to the top 1%, and almost everyone under the income of $75,000 will be paying more in taxes, not less. They redistributed the wealth to the top. Well, how about the deficit? What did it do to that? Well, get a load of this new article in the Washington Post. The federal government is on track to borrow nearly $1 trillion this fiscal year. Trump's first full year in charge of the budget. He blew up the budget. It's not going to be anywhere near balanced. It is totally out of control. But okay, let's give context. Maybe things were worse before. Well, that figure is almost double what the government borrowed in fiscal year 2017. Oops, he made it way, way worse. So if you're a Republican who liked that tax plan, that's okay. I think you're wrong. I think it'll do great damage to the economy, and I think that damage has already begun. But you cannot say you're for that tax bill and say that you care about balanced budgets, because you just proved you don't. And Obama was handed a massive shortfall because of the 2008 collapse, also brought on by tax cuts for the rich from George W. Bush. Wow, what a coincidence. So he brought the deficit all the way down, and as he was bringing it down, now Trump is going to bring it back up. Clinton brought the deficit down, Bush skyrocketed it back up. Reagan, skyrocketing deficits. They never, ever cared about balanced budgets or deficits. It was a lie all along. Now, more context. Here are the exact figures. The US Treasury expects to borrow $955 billion this fiscal year, according to documents released Wednesday by the Treasury Department. That's Trump's Treasury Department. You can't call it fake news. It's the highest amount of borrowing in 6 years, and a big jump from the $519 billion the federal government borrowed last year. So way, way worse and more fiscally irresponsible than Obama. Facts are stubborn things, as a Republican president once said. So why are we going to have to borrow so much money? Well, in a report this week, the Congressional Budget Office, which is nonpartisan, said tax receipts are going to be lower because of the new tax law. To which I say, of course. You know, Republicans have this voodoo economics, which in this case, they were too embarrassed to say, well, the economy will grow so much we won't have a budget problem. They confessed that the budget will grow by at least $1 trillion and all the way up to potentially $1.5 trillion because of this tax plan in particular. But they have this theory that it'll only be $1.5 trillion because once you cut taxes, the economy will bloom. If you've seen the stock market over the last couple of days, and that is by no means the only indication of how well the economy is doing, sometimes a very poor indication. Well, the last couple of days, it has been crashing hard because they pumped too much money into the economy, both through the Federal Reserve and through Trump's tax plan. They did too many stock buybacks and overinflated, and guess what? Created a bubble in the stock market, of course, leading to potential inflation down the road, something else that I predicted a little bit earlier in the show, which was, I should say, a couple of weeks ago. And so when you have this out of control tax cut, no, the economy does not magically grow. Supply side economics and trickle down economics has not worked. It has been shown over and over again. And so when the economy does not magically grow, the numbers get worse and worse and worse for our budget. So what's next then for the Republicans? Well, Washington Post explains the uptick in borrowing is yet another complication in the heated debates in Congress over whether to spend more money on infrastructure, the military, disaster relief, and other domestic programs. The deficit is already up significantly even before Congress allots more money to any of these areas. Do you understand what's happening? Now they're turning around and going, nope, sorry, we have no money left. So disaster relief, no, not as much. The military, nope, we're overfunding the military. They're giving even more than Trump asked for, both the Republicans and the Democrats, because the corruption for the defense contractors must continue unabated, just no relief for us. So infrastructure, that might have helped you, not as much. Later, now they're talking about increasing payroll taxes. That mainly goes on the middle class. And so, and they're gonna say, oh, well, what can we do? We ran out of money. We gotta cut your Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. So that's what's coming next. We told you it would happen, and it is now happening. So more context here. The White House got a taste of just how problematic this debt situation could get this week. Investors are concerned about all the additional borrowing and the likelihood of higher inflation, which is why the interest rates on US government bonds hit the highest level since 2014. That in turn partly drove the worst weekly sell-off in the stock market in 2 years. And there, Heather Long was referring to the sell-off of Friday. Sorry, the sell-off on Monday is of a similar magnitude. So the sell-off and the bubble crash continues. Now, Peter Davis, who is a former tax economist, says, so my Wall Street clients are starting to talk recession in 2019 because of these issues. Fiscal policy is just out of control. So if you're talking recession in 2019, that would be an optimistic scenario now. You might want to speed up that clock. Trump's Treasury forecast borrowing over $1 trillion in 2019 and over $1.1 trillion in 2020. In other words, this is not an aberration this year. It is mind-blowing, gigantic deficits as far as the eye can see, and you get almost nothing in return. Today, Paul Ryan bragged you might get $1.50 a week extra. Meanwhile, trillions going to the rich and creating gigantic deficits. And finally, before taking office, Trump described himself as the king of debt. Well, perhaps that is the one thing that he was accurate about. Here we are in America suffering under the king of debt. All right, that's what I got for you in this segment. I got another segment coming up for you guys in a minute, and that'll have stories of the clownish Devin Nunes, which are always fun, and more right-wing terrorism. We'll be right back.
Oh, did you guys help us win a Shorty Award last year?
Did you?
In the category of Audience Honor for Best Overall YouTube Presence?
Best Overall YouTube Presence.
We want to win it again this year.
That's right.
We want to win, and we can't do it without your help.
We need you.
We need you.
All right, so here's how we're gonna do it, guys. Look, we wanna win for best overall YouTube presence for the Young Turks, but we also wanna win best in overall Facebook presence and best web series for The Breakdown, which is great. But let me tell you about YouTube presence. Go to tytnetwork.com/YouTube presence, which is very logical. Click on the vote in best overall YouTube presence, also very logical. You can log in using your Facebook or Twitter accounts to create a Shorty account to submit your vote. You share your vote on social media, ba-bang, that counts as an extra vote. You're voting like crazy now. Now, do this for The Breakdown and web series and in a Facebook presence as well. And you're seeing the links to vote on your screen. And don't worry, we'll have them in the description box below. So easy peasy, you just go right there, just click, boom, you're there. And get a load of this. You can vote once per day all the way to February 22nd.
Every day, every day.
Go nuts, have fun. You know, we always tell you to get out and vote. This gives you an opportunity to do it over and over again. Sorry, you know, by the end, we might just get tired of winning.
No, and this is great practice for the midterm elections. You know, get that voting muscle in order.
That's right, here we go, ready?
Yeah.
Practice. All right, back on the Young Turks. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur. Chris writes in, Trump is not clapping. Trump said not clapping for him is un-American and treasonous. That is fascism 101. Dancing Queen says, yes, Jank, yes, thanks for mentioning Republicans didn't stand to applaud when Obama spoke. Insert video clip of Paul Ryan sitting with zero clapping with a stiff face. Yes, so I guess that makes Paul Ryan treasonous as well. Zoran Kukovic says, whatever the opposite of the Midas touch is, Trump has it. It's very true. And Lee Cox says, Wells Fargo has a little more cash to pad their litigation budget, and they're going to need it for all the fraud that they committed. By the way, if you want an actual progressive bank, aspirationbank.com, they happen to be our sponsor, and the reason they're our sponsor is because we believe in them. They have great rates, well, down to zero if you want. You get to set your own rates. All the ATMs are free. They get a 1% interest rate, which is way higher than your average bank. Ask your bank. There's no way they're going to give you a 1% interest rate. Aspiration.com does that. So check them out. And they don't put money into oil companies, defense contractors, private prisons, etc. So feel good about where you put your money and make it a good financial decision by going to aspiration.com. All right, let me go over here and talk about Nunes. So you guys know about release the memo. This is a memo that Devin Nunes wrote, which is basically like his opinion man. And of course, he worked on the Trump transition team, so it was pro-Trump and against the FBI, the people investigating him. Color me shocked. So Talking Points memo explains Trump on Friday declassified a memo authored by Nunes' staff alleging that FBI officials misled the secret of Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court to surveil Trump's former campaign aide Carter Page, but the document ultimately revealed little and omitted key background information. Well, now Nunes is back. Oh, yay. And he's going to talk about how Papadopoulos was no big deal. So that's another reason he claims why this Russia investigation is wrong, okay, and misguided. So let's go to Nunes.
Congressman, in the big picture, this whole thing goes about Carter Page. Some say, well, what about Papadopoulos? They started looking at him earlier. What do you say to that?
Well, I would say that if Papadopoulos was such a major figure, why didn't you get a warrant on him? If Papadopoulos was such a major figure, you had nothing on him. You know, the guy lied. As far as we can tell, Papadopoulos never even knew who Trump was, or never even had met with the president. And look, getting drunk in London and talking to diplomats, saying that you don't like Hillary Clinton, is really, I think it's kind of scary that our intelligence agencies would take that and use it against an American citizen.
Nunes is one of the least bright people in Congress, and that is saying something. Not a lot of geniuses up there. He said, why did they go after Papadopoulos, huh? They did, that's why he pled guilty. Oh, right, anyway. Then Preet Bharara steps in. He's a former district attorney for the Southern District in New York, another guy fired by Donald Trump for investigating Donald Trump. Anyway, he says this man, Devin Nunes, is the chair of the Intelligence Committee. There's literally a picture of Papadopoulos meeting with the president. As far as we can tell, Nunes is not good at his job, meaning he's not very intelligent. If he's looking for intelligence, he hasn't found it yet. But is that really true? Because Nunes said that Papadopoulos and Trump didn't even know each other. Now Preet Bharara, former district attorney, what would he know about evidence? Is there really evidence of Papadopoulos and Trump knowing each other? Well, let's go to this picture, which, by the way, comes from Donald Trump's campaign. Oh, right, there's Papadopoulos and there's Donald Trump. They didn't even know each other. That is a meeting of senior officials with Trump. Oops. If you're gonna make outlandish claims, can you just check to see if there's any pictures? Just do a little bit of due diligence? No, of course not with Nunes, and that's why the memo is preposterous. Oh yes, the FBI, terrible, this Rosenstein guy, I can't believe he ordered this warrant to surveil Carter Page. Well, did you know Carter Page was being surveilled all the way back to 2013 because he had met with Russian spies? Anyways, okay, did you know that Rosenstein was just asking to repeat a warrant that had been granted initially and then re-granted because a court had already ruled that they should do surveillance on him because he might have been a top target of the Russians? Well, anyway, I'm going to admit all those facts and then pretend that Papadopoulos and Trump don't know each other, of course. So what was Trump's take on all this, he released the memo and he said that the memo, quote, totally vindicates him. Okay, of course it does no such thing. Now let's go back to Nunes, who is going to continue to talk nonsense. This will be fun.
That you coordinated all of this with the White House. What's your reaction?
Yeah, well, Mr. Schiff knows that he's spreading false narrative there, but that's not new for him. He spread false narrative the entire time. So the Democrats were well aware that I did not leak information. However, for a year they stayed quiet. They continued. They advocated for my removal from the committee. And why is that? It's because we've been successful at getting to the bottom of a lot of real problems with the institutions in our government. And so, look, there's no question they want me gone, but whatever they accuse you of doing is what they're doing.
Wow, that's ironic. In a closed-door meeting, one of the Democratic congressmen had asked Nunes, did you coordinate with Trump's White House in writing this memo? And he's like, no problem answering it. He's like, okay, did your staff coordinate? Nunes was like, I refuse to answer that. Oh, I see. So your staff coordinated with Trump's White House. Wow. Nunes doesn't even know what's in the memo. Anyway, so he says, oh, these Democrats, it's just Democrats. It's just Democrats being partisan. They're just asking for my removal, but not Republicans. Really, let's find out about that. In fact, I want you to listen to one more Nunes clip because he's going to mention someone important here.
Remember, a year ago, they were claiming that they had more than circumstantial evidence of collusion, of Trump colluding with Russians, but they keep coming up with goose eggs. They have nothing. And so what do? They attack people who are trying to get to the truth, people like myself, people like Trey Gowdy. But look, it actually helps. And I said this on Friday. We actually enjoy the criticism because when you're being criticized like this by all the major networks and being attacked by the left, we know that we're getting close to the truth. And I think the American people are just beginning to learn the truth about the Hillary campaign and the Democratic Party and their involvement and how they corrupted our institutions.
So his thesis is that all the top people that work at the FBI, including people appointed by Donald Trump, who are, by the way, almost all Republican. Mueller's a Republican, Comey was a Republican, Wray, who's the current head of the FBI, a Republican, Rosenstein is Trump's deputy attorney general and a Republican. Somehow they were all working with Hillary Clinton and then there's nothing to the Russia investigation. Now he says that and he's saying that Democrats are targeting him because he's getting close to the truth on that. And he says the other guy who would know is Trey Gowdy. Well, great. We're going to get to Gowdy in 1 second. Let me give you one more quote here from CNN. Nunes said that he delegated the task of reviewing the underlying intelligence that became the basis for the GOP memo to Gowdy and 2 investigators. And those were the people who briefed the rest of the members of the intelligence panel. I love that for 2 reasons. One, he's like, the intelligence, I don't even really look at it. Gowdy, it was Gowdy. Oh, okay, great. So let's go to Gowdy. Does Gowdy think that the investigation is nothing at all and that this memo proves they should end the investigation? Let's find out.
I actually don't think it has any impact on the Russia probe for this reason.
The memo has no impact on the Russia probe.
Not to me, it doesn't, and I was pretty integrally involved in the drafting of it. There is a Russia investigation without a dossier. So to the extent the memo deals with the dossier and the FISA process, the dossier has nothing to do with the meeting at Trump Tower. The dossier has nothing to do with an email sent by Cambridge Analytica. The dossier really has nothing to do with George Papadopoulos' meeting in Great Britain. It also doesn't have anything to do with obstruction of justice. So there's going to be a Russia probe even without a dossier.
Oops. Can Nunes be any more wrong? Gowdy is deeply Republican. He's the one who led all the Benghazi hearings in his committee. And Nunes himself said, well, Gowdy knows. And Gowdy comes on here and says, it doesn't affect the investigation at all. You should definitely still do the Russian investigation. But okay, wait. One more from Gowdy. Does this memo vindicate Trump and does that mean we should get rid of Mueller? Let's find out.
Well, I'm actually in a really small group, I think, of Republicans that think that this FISA process is suspect and wrong and should not have taken place. But you still have a Russia investigation even without it. So I don't know how many other Republicans feel that way. I am on record as saying I support Bob Mueller 100%. I think you would have a Russia look, Russia tried to interfere with our election in 2016 with or without a dossier. So you need an investigation into Russia. You need an investigation into Trump Tower and the Cambridge Analytica email, separate and apart from the dossier. So those are not connected issues to me. They may be for other Republicans, but they're not for me.
Oops. Why is Trey Gowdy being honest, by the way? Because he's retiring. So he's like, all right, now I'm telling you the truth. This memo basically does nothing. Are you backing away from Mueller because he's corrupted, according to Nunes? Well, Nunes said Gowdy's the guy who knows the actual intelligence. And there's Gowdy saying, I back Mueller 100%. Oops, and double oops. So what does Trump have to say about all this? He tweets out, Representative Devin Nunes, a man of tremendous courage and grit, may someday be recognized as a great American hero for what he has exposed and what he has had to endure. Oh, you back Nunes for blindly backing you with no evidence. Of course you do. Bunch of clowns over there. Okay, I got one more story for you guys. Unfortunately, recently in Italy, we had a significant terrorist event. Talking Points memo explains Luca Traini, 28 years old, remained jailed as police investigated him on multiple counts of attempted murder with the aggravating circumstance of racial hatred for the Saturday attacks in the Italian city of Macerata. Oh my God, man, ISIS sent this guy, huh? Hey, look, we got to figure out what the hell's going on here. So we got to block all these Muslims. Oh, he's not Muslim. Huh, that's interesting. Oh, he targeted immigrants because he's a right-winger. Huh, no wonder I haven't seen a tweet from Donald Trump about this. Let's give you more. Italian authorities said they seized Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf and other publications linked to Nazism and a flag with a Celtic cross, a symbol commonly used by white supremacists, from Traini's home on Sunday. So who did he target? The 5 men and 1 woman wounded in a 2-hour drive-by shooting spree are from Nigeria, Ghana, Gambia, and Mali, according to RAI state television. I guess we got to stop all immigration from Italy until we figure out what the hell's going on. I mean, we got a responsibility to protect Americans, and if it turns out they've got these kind of white supremacist terrorists in Italy, a place known for fascism before, we got to make sure we're safe. We got to figure out what the hell's going on. I'm just applying Donald Trump standards, right? If you're unsure, you never know. Some members of a group do terrorism, well, you got to block everybody from the group. The Italians, I'm done with them. Sorry, John Iadarola. We might, maybe, I don't know how John Iadarola, one of our hosts, got here. Might have been chain migration. We got to look into it. Maybe end it and send him back. The suspect was an unsuccessful candidate last year in local election for the anti-migrant Northern League political party. Italy's ANSA news agency quoted acquaintances saying he previously had ties with the neo-fascist Forza Nuova and Casa Pound parties. Some stuff he put on his forehead. Let's take a look at his picture. Might give you a sense of it as well. That's a swastika. So not really subtle. Hey, you know what? Maybe, no, it's not fair to call it a Italian ban. Maybe we should just make it a right-wing ban from all the different countries until we figure out what the hell's going on, right? Because to be fair to Italy, and we don't want to discriminate against Italy, it might be a lot of countries we have to ban because of right-wingers that come from those countries that commit horrible acts of terrorism. Weird, though, that there hasn't been nonstop press about this issue, because I know that if there's an act of terrorism, especially if it's politically motivated, driven against certain groups, our press goes nuts over it, and Donald Trump goes nuts over it, and the Republicans go nuts over it, unless it's a right-wing terrorist, as is, by the way, the majority of terrorist acts in the United States. So now, final piece of irony here. Now, Traini, some people think, were outraged because a Nigerian immigrant had assaulted an Italian woman recently. a 29-year-old identified as Jennifer in a shooting spree, and so they then asked about the people who were shot by Trainee, and we go to that portion of the story here. A Nigerian man has been, and they explain. I'm sorry, not Jennifer. Jennifer was shot by Trainee. This is the earlier shooting by the immigrant. A Nigerian man has been arrested in the death of Pamela Mastro Pietro, 18 years old. Her remains were found in 2 suitcases days after she walked away from a drug rehab community. So a horrible crime. Assaulted, murdered, chopped up, put into suitcases. And so when an immigrant does a horrible crime, everyone from that community is held responsible by some, particularly in the right wing. When a right winger does a crime, or a white supremacist does a crime, or an Italian does a crime, the entire right wing community is not held responsible. All white supremacists are not held responsible, and obviously all Italians are not held responsible. Now, let me add, nor should they. Of course they shouldn't. That's preposterous. But when it comes to one group in particular, our media and our right wing lose their minds. The one exception is, of course you can't hold all Italians accountable, but yes, Muslims, it's a particularly dark religion. It's the one that creates all these problems. Hey, we got to figure out what the hell is going on, and we got to do a Muslim/travel ban. So when it comes to that, there is demagoguery. When it comes to these, oh well, I mean, look, there was the immigrant who was killed, or the immigrant who did the killing, etc. Well, let's now go to the irony that I was mentioning earlier. A Nigerian community leader in Makarata, Sami Konon, said he heard the shots as he was going to meet with cultural mediators about organizing a sit-in to support Mastro Pietro's family. That's the poor woman who was killed. And unfortunately, salt in the wounds here, they called off the event after the shootings for fear of further racist attacks. So you hear sometimes from the right wing, why won't the fill in the blank, Muslims, Mexicans, immigrants, call out their own? Here were the Nigerians going to support the Italian victim in this case, and they were shot while going to support the victim. Why won't other Italians call out Luca Trainee? By the way, they do. Of course they do. The government has apprehended him, etc. Why would other right wingers call out Luca Trainee? They actually won't. White supremacists? Yeah, good luck with that. So, unlike the other side, we do not believe that everyone in that category is responsible for Luca Trainee's crimes. Luca Trainee is responsible for those crimes. It would be nice if both sides use the same standards. All right, we got to take a break here. When we come back, the Republicans have a bold new plan for paid family leave. Only problem is it's not paid, and they're going to take it out of something that is painful. And this is Ivanka Trump and Marco Rubio getting together to make a plan, so you know it's going to be horrible. That when we return. Turks, Cenk Uygur, and Anna Kasparian with you. I Am Sock says, to everyone saying that Gowdy is trying to play nice for a judgeship, it's South Carolina. Doing this arguably hurts him. That's true, and I have to read more into it, but I think over the weekend I read a headline that, or no, it was a paragraph in a different article about how Gowdy did not take that position on the circuit court that we all thought he was going for. And I was very surprised by that, which makes it more likely that he's leaving because Trump did something really bad and he doesn't want to be in a position to investigate or defend him. Malou says, I can't wait for Professor Mueller to teach these idiots all about the concepts they find so confusing, like treason and obstruction. And Null Cookies with the tweet of the day, Nunes reminds me of a butter poached lobster. Okay, super random. I was just amused by it. And I kind of get it.
So delicious.
I know, that's the only problem with that.
Yeah, like I don't get it. Maybe you'll explain to me later.
Yeah, he looks like a lobster. It's true. Leonard Lavallo and Jennifer Deli Carpini are members of the day. Thank you guys for making the show possible. You get to podcast the show any way you like, audio, video, live, stream, download, all of that commercial free at tytnetwork.com/join. Okay, what's next, Anna?
All right. Marco Rubio is attempting to show the softer side of the Republican Party, the softer side of Rubio himself. And the way that he's doing it is taking on the issue of paid family leave. Now, as we all know, Ivanka Trump wants to champion that policy as well. And so it turns out that they are both working together to come up with a proposal that Republicans would find palatable. Now, keep in mind that the Party of Family Values isn't necessarily supportive of paid family leave. And so they need to come up with a proposal that appeals to them and of course also appeals to Democrats in Congress. Now, they need to find a plan that would neither impose a mandate on employers nor raise taxes to pay for it in order for Republicans to sign on. Now, what they are, and this is Marco Rubio specifically, what Marco Rubio is experimenting with is a policy that would do the following: allow people to draw Social Security benefits when they want to take time off for a new baby or family-related matters, and then delay their checks when they hit retirement age. So, for instance, if this type of proposal passes into law, a family would be able, an individual would be able to take a month or 2 months, 3 months off, take money out of their Social Security fund in order to take that time off, but then they would have to delay retirement by that same amount of time. If it's 1 month, it would be 1 month. 3 months, it would be 3 months. You guys get the point.
Okay, so let's break down the issues here. So number one, they say it's paid family leave. And then Rubio explained, but Republicans refuse to have employers pay for it. Well, then it's not really paid family leave.
Right.
And they said, well, no, it's okay. We'll make you pay for it out of your own Social Security. Once again, that's not really paid family leave because I'm paying for it.
Right.
Right? That's unpaid family leave. You're just gonna let them borrow from their own money at a later time.
Right, and also keep in mind that Social Security is a program that Republicans attack time and time again. They talk about how it's not sustainable, how it won't even be around for, younger generations for when they're ready to retire. I mean, they talk about how it's riddled with issues. And then if Marco Rubio proposes this, how is he going to make the case that the Social Security system is sustainable enough to deal with this type? And they're going to sell it as an entitlement. Even though, again, this is money that comes out of every American's paycheck and it's not paid family leave by any means. It's just essentially borrowing money from your own retirement and then delaying retirement even further.
The only other idea they had so far was to pay for it by increasing payroll taxes. But payroll taxes are the most regressive tax there is. After a while, the rich stop paying for them entirely. So it mainly hits the middle class, the working middle class.
Yeah.
So their idea is paid family leave. Once again, the employer doesn't pay, you pay through higher taxes. Higher taxes on the rich, oh God, no. God, no. On employers, God, no. No, no, no. Those are Republican donors. Higher taxes on you, or take it out of your Social Security. Which one would you like?
So I also found this quote by Marco Rubio super interesting. He was speaking to Politico about this very issue and his proposal, which, by the way, he's still kind of toying with it. He hasn't actually proposed anything yet. This is just what he's thinking about doing. And here's what he told Politico. I think there will be significant initial resistance to it because it's not an issue that's been identified with the Republican Party. So even the idea of individuals borrowing from their own retirement to help pay for a new baby is something that Republicans would be resistant to. Why? Why? I mean, this is the party of family values. This is the party that will literally, if they could have their way, force you to have a baby if you get pregnant. But then they'll turn around and resist the idea of you borrowing money from your own retirement. Come on.
So what happened? I thought this was the softer side of conservatism. There is no soft side, okay? So there's two elements to that. One is Marco Rubio admitting, of course the Republicans are against family leave, even though they pretend to be for family values. By family values, they mean the ability to control your body if you're a woman, not if you actually want to have the baby, for you to take care of the baby. If you were against abortion, by the way, wouldn't you want to create incentives for people to actually have a baby and then be able to take care of it after it's born? Nah, bootstrap time. I already gave all the money to the rich. After you have the baby, it's your goddamn business, not mine.
That's right.
Can we at least take it out of their own Social Security? Well, by the way, a proposal I definitely do not agree with. But he says other Republicans are like, no, under all circumstances.
Yeah.
We were just kidding when we said family values. And by the way, initial resistance, what do you mean? You guys are in charge. You could just look at the proposal and go, oh yeah, that makes sense. And you could vote on it tomorrow.
Right.
It's not initial resistance, it's the resistance period.
Exactly.
To helping anyone having kids.
So now I just want to quickly mention how Ivanka Trump fits into this whole situation. She wants to champion this issue and she wants pretty much anything to pass so they can sell it as, oh, we succeeded in providing paid family leave, even though we know that Marco Rubio's current plan is not paid family leave. Now, initially, she wanted more of the burden to be placed on the employers, but it seems as though anyone who approaches her with any proposal, she's all for it because she wants it to pass. So for instance, according to Politico's reporting, in private conversations with senators, Ivanka Trump has discussed raising payroll taxes or otherwise paying into Social Security to create a new personal paid leave fund. In other words, she'll take anything she can get because she wants to turn around and say, we succeeded. I succeeded in providing what I said I would provide. But we all know that the reality is very different from the way that they'll frame it and sell it.
So last couple of things here. Recently in the last tax bill, the Republicans actually did put in, because of Marco Rubio, something about paid leave. That was, of course, a tax cut for corporations. I mean, it's almost comical. Now, to be fair, okay, full context is they would offer a tax credit for businesses who voluntarily offer employees paid leave. So they'll help you if your employer bothers to offer it, then they'll give them a tax cut because that's the only solution Republicans have for anything, right? Oh, I've got cancer, don't worry, tax cut, right? So now, as Marco Rubio later acknowledges, but not everybody will offer that voluntarily. And people can't go without getting paid for 2 weeks, let alone 2 months. That's impossible. Apparently, Rubio is the only Republican that recognizes that that's impossible for the average American. But his answer to that is, of course, we'll just take it out of your Social Security. And if that plan works, by the way, oh, you got healthcare bills? We'll take it out of your Social Security. You got any kind of issues? We'll take it out of your Social Security. You know that right now they moved it up already, so the retirement age is now 67. You keep going like this, it'll be 97. Whenever they run into any issues, we're not gonna make any of the rich or multinational corporations pay for it. We're just gonna make you pay for it by working yourself to death.
Well, let's move on to more tax-related news. And this is something that didn't get much attention or play during the whole tax cut debate, but it caught my attention and it's super interesting. Donald Trump and the Republicans succeeded in passing tax cuts, but those tax cuts do cost quite a bit, and they have to make up for, the huge break that the wealthy and corporations are getting through this new tax law. One way that they've done it is they have gotten rid of certain deductions. Alimony was something that people who had just gotten a divorce could deduct from their taxes, but little known fact is that this new tax plan actually gets rid of that deduction, and it's going to lead to significant problems for divorcing couples, which is why right now divorce lawyers are urging people to get through their divorce as soon as possible before this portion of the law kicks in 2019. So let me give you the details. The deduction substantially reduces the cost of alimony payments for people in the highest income bracket. It means every dollar they pay to support a former spouse really costs them little more than 60 cents. So they get to deduct a portion of it, meaning that they don't actually spend that entire amount on alimony. Also, previously, the individual receiving the alimony payments would have to pay taxes on that income. Under this new tax plan, no, they don't have to, which is really strange. So people receiving alimony next year won't have to pay taxes on it. Shocking. I don't, but that's earned income. I mean, you just earned income. Why wouldn't you get taxed on it? But the person who's giving it to you doesn't get to use that money. They give it right to the other person, but they get taxed on it.
So it's weird, and one of the things that's, I think it makes sense to deduct it, and the reason for that is you do actually have to pay it, and once you pay it, that's money you don't have, and hence less money you made that year in a sense. So, but now they're saying, no, you're not allowed to deduct it. So of course you know what's gonna happen. That means that people will offer less in alimony. If they thought they were actually paying 60 cents on the dollar, they could afford to offer more. That is why divorce lawyers are panicking right now. And so you could say, hey, no big deal, but it's just, that's what's happening and our job's to report it. And it will certainly affect those alimony payments. And yes, now people will pay less because of this issue. To me, there's a bigger issue about taxes overall that we'll get to in a second, but I do want to convey to you the sense of panic, which I'm slightly amused by. Mary Vitas, a lawyer in Philadelphia, a former chair of the American Bar Association's section on family law, says, now's not the time to wait. If you're gonna get a divorce, get it now.
No, I love the quotes in the article, but also I learned so much about divorces that I didn't look into ever. And I mean, it doesn't matter, I'm sure it'll never affect me, but but they're, okay, California, man. California's gotta chill out with all this divorce stuff. Did you know that in California, you can't get divorced within a week or a month? Like you have to, there's like a 6-month period that you have to wait before you're finally officially divorced.
It's called a cooling off phase.
No, I don't like that.
There are cooling off periods in other states like Pennsylvania where it's actually longer. You have to wait a year.
Unacceptable.
So that's why the divorce lawyers are panicking now, especially in California, where there are some high dollar divorces.
Yeah.
And they're like, look, you don't get it. You got to go through, you have to say you're getting divorced. The other side has to agree. There's all these things, and then you got to wait 6 months. So they're telling all their clients, if you're slightly upset in your marriage, get divorced now.
It's kind of crazy.
By the way, party of family values.
Yeah.
So now the larger point about taxes overall. See, what did I tell you? They're giving a giant tax cut to corporations. They got to get it from somewhere. When a Republican congressman was asked on television, can you name one corporate loophole that you guys took away? Couldn't name one. Now, when it comes to loopholes for you guys, or I would argue it's not really a loophole, it's a logical deduction. No, for the regular person, we're taking it away. So they had to get the money from somewhere. They still have a $1.5 trillion extra deficit they created, but like I told you, that's not the only money. They had to also get, because the reality of the tax cuts for the rich and corporations, the size is about 6 trillion. So the other 4.5 trillion had to come from somewhere. And where does it come from? You. They took away your deductions, but took away none of the loopholes of corporations. When they first started talking about tax reform, they said, oh, it's not a tax cut, it's tax reform.
Right.
We're going to get rid of the loopholes so the corporations can't cheat and then lower their rates.
And also keep in mind how they sell the way that they got rid of all these deductions. Well, we're trying to simplify the tax code. It's just too complicated. It's too complicated to give, the middle class and the working class any deductions. I mean, the corporations can keep their deductions and their loopholes. That's not complicated.
Corporate loopholes aren't complicated. Yeah. The Dutch sandwich and the Irish double or whatever they're called, there's these crazy tax loopholes. They all still exist. They're enormously complicated.
But they're gonna create the jobs, the high paying jobs.
Oh, sure. Yeah. By the way, how's that market working out for you guys?
Oof. Oof. Trump's not bragging about the stock market today, is he?
Oops.
Yeah. All right, we got to take a break.
All right. We've got, when we come back, Lowsome Republicans running for office, but the way that they've been normalized is the real problem. Also, later in today's programming, and there is a lot of programming today, at Rebel headquarters, I'm going to have Don Siegelman on, former governor of Alabama, arguably was a political prisoner for 7 years. That crime against him was committed by Karl Rove. It's an amazing story. We'll tell you all about it because we're going to talk to him. And then at 6 o'clock, after the post game, I will be talking to Kyle Kulinski about Russia. Ooh, drums. He has a different take than I do on the importance of the Russia investigation, and we'll have a very interesting conversation about that. By the way, members will get to watch all of that live, tytnetwork.com/join. We'll be right back.
T-1 minute till landing. TYT broadcast controllers, listen up. Give me a go, no go for landing. Sound?
Audio is hovering at minus 12 decibels. We're go.
Streaming?
We're go.
Camera crew?
We're go.
Mission control?
We're go.
Snacks?
We're good.
Iguana?
Sir, we are go for landing.
Okay, everybody. I want this to go off without a hitch.
Sir, I've been looking over this joke for the past hour, and with the bandit firing now weeks old and waning in
English, Johnson, English. What are you trying to tell me?
This joke isn't going to land, sir.
Okay, everyone. Forget the old plan. From this moment on, we're improvising a new joke.
So this is where the show started, and this is where it was supposed to end. Now the joke was supposed to land here, but that's not gonna happen, obviously. So we need to come up with a new joke. Maybe here?
The hits are dropping, streams are failing, retweets are stopping.
40 seconds.
All right, team. We gotta find a way to make this fit into a joke about this that will appeal to them.
30 seconds.
The Trump joke's our safest option. Trying to land a Trump joke after this week's events is a suicide mission.
We are officially out of time. We need to act now.
Sir, I think our best course of action is to let Jink try to land a dad joke.
That's the deal?
That's the deal.
All right, everyone, to their stations.
Germany, and some of the creditor nations like Netherlands and Finland.
Cameras, position, social media team. Brace for unfollows.
10 seconds.
As for the rest of us, all any of us can do now is wait and hope.
This is gonna be the worst disaster TYT has ever experienced.
With all due respect, sir, I think this will be our finest hour 2 yet.
Giving mood. Angela Merkel's government seems to have signaled pronounced.
Come on, Jink.
Everyone, it's been a pleasure streaming with you.
Greek Prime Minister immediately picked up the phone to Putin and said, "You Putin any money in?" Okay, anyway.
TYT crew, the joke has landed.
All right, we're back. Cenk and Anna on the Young Turks. Keldvizer writes in another snazzy look on Miss Anna Kasparian.
Oh, thank you.
That's actually Mrs. at this point, right?
Yeah, so since I didn't take his last name, is it still Mrs.?
I think so. I think so. But what do I know?
Yeah.
And is that an acceptable thing to say these days, a snazzy look?
I am so offended.
Okay.
No, yes, that's okay. That's more than okay. Thank you.
Enrique Rodriguez says, wow, Marco Rubio, I hadn't heard of him in a while. He must be a teenager by now. That's really funny. All right, Enrique, you have made us LOL. T-shirt for Enrique. Everybody check out shoptyt.com for the latest and greatest T-shirts. Control Left says, if Rubio is interested in paid family leave, he can start by figuring out how much it would take to pay the Trump family to leave. I like that. Demesh says paid family leave to Republicans means you pay your boss so you can go on vacation. Typical. It's true, that's literal. And then Tom Zawacki says, this is just another way of shifting debt onto the American public. The rich get $1.5 trillion tax rate. We get higher costs to our social services. Also true.
Yeah.
All right, Casper, what's next?
All right. There is a Republican congressional candidate from the 3rd District in Illinois, and he is going unchallenged, meaning that there is no one who will run against him in the Republican primary in that district, in that state. His name is Arthur Jones, and the reason why he's making headlines is because he is a disgusting human being. He openly denies that the Holocaust happened. In fact, his campaign website features a page called Holocaust that includes a typed note calling the murder of 6 million Jews by Nazis, quote, the biggest, blackest lie in history, and falsely claiming there is no proof of the Holocaust beyond a few professional concentration camp survivors. Okay. So again, no Republican is challenging him, so he is set to win the Republican ticket. And this has caused quite a bit of an issue for the Republican Party. There have been members of the Republican Party who have come out and, basically said that they don't agree with him, they don't like him, they don't want anything to do with him. But what stood out to me the most is how much this type of rhetoric has become normalized. In fact, he granted an interview to a local reporter in Chicago, and I want you to hear what he had to say about the issue of the Holocaust. Take a look.
Economic policies of Hitler brought that nation up from the very bottom. In 12 years of his rule, they went from the age of the biplane to the age of the rocket. I designed a huge ad, a full-page ad that appeared in the Milwaukee Journal newspaper. full page with a huge swastika right in the center of the thing. And the Jews had no idea, that was coming. Okay, and imagine you're some rabbi, he opened up the paper one morning and all of a sudden, bingo, here's that swastika looking you in the face. Who may join the America First Committee? Membership in this organization is open to any white American citizen of European non-Jewish descent. To me, the Holocaust is what I said it is. It's an international extortion racket. The green, red, and black flag of the black militants, that's their goal. They want to take over the Southland and drive the white people out and take it over and create a black nation right there.
Okay, so his campaign includes the slogan, "It's time to put America first." Gee, I wonder where he got that from. Also, he ran for office back in 2016 and he expressed his support for Trump's candidacy back then. But his only concern was that Trump's daughter Ivanka is married to a Jew. That was his quote. But now he says that he actually regrets voting for Trump because the president has, quote, surrounded himself with hordes of Jews. This guy is despicable.
Yeah.
Like there's someone out there who is actually significantly worse than Trump. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah. So the America First slogan that Trump also has actually originally was used by the America First Committee. And who were they? It was an anti-Semitic, non-interventionist group from World War II who thought we should not fight the Nazis. And that's why the Anti-Defamation League asked Trump not to use the slogan America First because of its dark history here in America. And Trump was like, yeah, whatever, man. No, I'm gonna use it, don't care.
Yeah, I think that's relevant, right? Because it's one, I mean, look, it's one thing if you play devil's advocate and you say, okay, well maybe Trump just didn't know America First by itself as a phrase isn't, a questionable phrase. But then once you look into the history and you know that where it comes from, you would think he'd stop using it if he's not, the person that we know he is. And he continued using it, doesn't care.
And America First does not have any other connotation. There isn't like, oh, but America First was also known for this.
Right.
No, it was only known in that context. So, look, one party has folks like Arthur Jones, another party doesn't. That doesn't make the other party wonderful and angelic. And both parties have corruption, and we should fight against the corruption in both parties. But if you're a white supremacist, it is very clear which party you're gonna go to. There was another blogger who was denying the Holocaust who was brought to the State of the Union by Matt Gaetz, the Republican congressman, and openly bragging about it. So these are dark times, and in Charlottesville, they not only ran over Heather Heyer and all the other people who were injured after they were doing their white supremacist rally, but in a story you might not have heard, some of the Nazis had surrounded a Jewish temple in Charlottesville. And the people were trapped inside. They were calling the police, but the police were busy and they were really scared. They were trying to figure out a way to get the Torah and other things out of the temple without the Nazis catching them. And the Nazis were shouting, "This is in America, this is in Charlottesville, Virginia, in the year 2017. And they were chanting blood and soil outside their temple. These are very scary times. So now it doesn't mean that every Republican is Arthur Jones, but when Arthur Jones thinks, which party am I going to go to, that's a no-brainer.
Right, and again, to their credit, there are Republicans who are coming out and speaking against Arthur Jones and what he's saying, but it is fascinating that they can't find another Republican to take part in the primary. It is what it is, and I do want to be clear. It's highly unlikely that Arthur Jones is going to win. It's more likely that the representative that's the current incumbent, who's a Democrat, is going to win. His name is Dan Lipinski.
By the way, Dan Lipinski might not even survive a primary by Mary Newman, who's given him a run for his money, and she should. That leads me to my final point in my frustration with the Democratic Party, which is totally different scale and context. But Dan Lipinski, they say, oh, don't worry about Arthur Jones. He can't possibly win. That's such a heavily Democratic district. Then why is Dan Lipinski, one of the most conservative Democrats in the country, representing a district that, according to all the experts, Democrats could not possibly lose? So then why don't we have a really progressive person representing that district instead of a guy who is deeply conservative. Would the Republicans allow that anywhere where you have a deeply red district? They're like, but let's have a liberal Republican there instead. Never, right? So why do the Democratic Party, not only tolerate Dan Lipinski, but encourage him time and time again? Because they don't care about being progressive. All they care about is the money. Can Dan Lipinski raise a lot of money from his corporate friends? Yes. Then they're like, good enough. He calls himself a Democrat. What do we care how he votes? Because the Democratic Party doesn't care about policy. So the Republicans, they think some loathsome things, but a lot of them care about policy. They care about pushing the country more right wing.
Yeah.
Their policy is horrible, and the Democrats' refusal to fight for their policy beliefs is also horrible. Again, different scale and context.
Right.
But that's the problem with the parties.
And look, to be fair, Republicans don't care about being identified as corporatists, right? So they'll openly—
They revel in it.
Exactly. So they will openly propose pro-corporate policies, and they can push for it because their voters know what they really represent. Whereas Democrats have the same issue of corporate corruption, but they pretend like they don't. And then they try to distract with social issues. It's constantly social issues.
One last fun fact. Jones thinks that the Confederate flag is a symbol of white pride and white resistance. How's that working out for you? I think we beat those guys pretty bad. So if you think you're resisting, I got bad news for you. All those states are in the Union. They're part of the United States of America. And your so-called white resistance failed miserably.
All right, moving on to other news from Illinois. Lots of dramas happening there. There is a Republican challenger to the current governor of Illinois. His name is Bruce Rauner. And a state representative by the name of Jeanne Ives is planning on primarying him because she feels that he isn't conservative enough. Now, she is in the news today because she made the decision to put out a super questionable campaign ad that a lot of Republicans have called on her to take down, to pull, and she has refused to do so. We're gonna show you what the ad is, and then I'll give you some of the reaction that she's received as a result. Take a look.
Stay tuned for a special message.
We want to say thank you.
Thank you, Bruce Rauner.
Thank you for signing legislation that lets me use the girls' bathroom.
Thank you for making all Illinois families pay for my abortions.
Thank you, Bruce Rauner, for opposing law enforcement and making Illinois a sanctuary state for illegal immigrant criminals.
Thank you, Bruce Rauner, for the taxpayer bailout of Exelon, with the largest electricity rate hike in U.S. history.
Thank you for making the rest of Illinois bail out Chicago teacher pensions, and for giving Rahm everything he wanted, and more.
Thank you, Bruce Rauner, for not being in charge, leaving Mike Madigan in charge.
I am not in charge. I'm trying to get to be in charge.
Thank you for being the worst Republican governor in the country.
Rauner caved on all 44 points he promised in the campaign. Even the call for a tax cut became a state record for a tax increase.
Thank you for betraying Illinois Republicans.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, you jump in.
My favorite part of that Unreal ad was the white guy pretending to be a Latino by putting a bandana on. Well, I would gotta give credit to the Latinos in the state of Illinois because apparently none of them would go in that ad.
Right, exactly. Like who would be crazy enough to be in that ad? So it's both maddening, but also kind of funny because it was such a poorly put together ad that you think it might be a joke. Maybe it's part of an SNL skit. But I mean, this is the way that right wingers like this state representative see these groups of people, these disenfranchised groups of people, right? They have this dude dressed up as a woman to make it seem as though transgender people are a threat to women if they use the bathrooms that they identify with. It's a joke. Now, Republicans have spoken out against the ad, but it doesn't matter. She is refusing to pull it. Republican Party Chair Tim Schneider called on Ives to pull the ad. He said there's no place in the Illinois Republican Party for rhetoric that attacks our fellow Illinoisans based on their race, gender, or humanity. She should pull down the ad and immediately apologize to the Illinoisans who were negatively portrayed in a cowardly attempt to stoke political division.
He's wrong about that, about how there's no place for it. There's a huge place for it. I'll explain why it exists in the first place. To me, that's more important than Ives. Ives happens to be one person who's particularly loathsome, but it's a big country with plenty of loathsome people. The question is who's funding it. We'll get to that in a second. But if you're wondering, wait, look at that Republican calling that attack against immigrants and transgender people cowardly and saying pull the ad and apologize. It's only because she ran it against another Republican. Rauner is the current Republican governor of Illinois. So keep it in context. Now, if Ives is a lunatic running for this race, who cares, right? She does an ad, maybe she puts that on our own Facebook page, 12 people see it, we move on with our lives. No, she's got plenty of money. So somebody's financing those ads. In fact, we know because there was her campaign got a $500,000 boost from conservative donor Dick Uihlein. So apparently Dick Uihlein saw that and thought, great, let me bribe her, legally so, to the tune of $500,000, because this is exactly my kind of lunatic.
So Ives and Uihlein used to be supporters of the current governor, right? And now they've both turned on him because he's not right-wing enough, he's not conservative enough for them. So I kind of like that drums.
Well, that is drums, but I'll tell you why drums. So is Uihlein and the other donors, are they particularly racist against women's rights, et cetera?
Yes.
No one, well, maybe,
Yeah.
and they're certainly acting like it, and you've got plenty of evidence to that effect. But I think that it's about something else. So let me give you one more piece of data though. Advertising data indicates that Ives placed at least $1 million in TV ads for the month of February alone. Wait a minute, we just started February. Now she's placed the ads to run in February, but that means she's got a world of money. This is a conservative primary opponent challenging a Republican incumbent with a world of money behind her. Is it because they're that racist and they're like, oh, you're racist against Latinos, et cetera, et cetera? I can't wait to give you money. Perhaps so, but at least some proof is in that pudding. But more likely, you saw that part about how Rauner didn't give the rich the tax cuts that they wanted. They're like, well, we're gonna have to punish you. Ives, on the other hand, will do anything we tell her.
They attack teachers. Like they went after teachers' pensions in her ad. Oh yeah, that state is really losing money because of those damn teachers and those fat retirement accounts.
No, but that's exactly what conservative donors like Dick Uihlein want.
Right.
They want to redistribute the money to the top. So they want to take it from the teachers and they want it in tax cuts for the rich. And they gave money to Rauner and Rauner didn't do his job enough according to them. So they said, now that's it. We're gonna find a new person to bribe. Again, these are all legal. I mean, he gave a $500,000. This is a freaking auction. Somebody can come in and give $5 million. There's no limits. But they say they're only speaking. They're not speaking. That's a suitcase full of money. And you think that Ives isn't going to work directly for those donors and give them every tax cut that they wanted? Rauner is independently wealthy. Maybe that's why he didn't do everything the donors wanted. And so they found that unacceptable. And now he's got to be eliminated. So now look, the good news is I think that they're all going to be defeated, whether it's Rauner or Ives, by Daniel Biss, most likely, who is fire-breathing progressive, who is outraising a lot of people on small dollars donations alone. You should check out my interview with him from Rebel headquarters. You could do that at youtube.com/TYTpolitics. We'll have a link down below in the description box or in the comment section. And by the way, don't miss any of those interviews. They're all on TYT Politics, or if you're a member, you can get all those interviews anytime you want at tytnetwork.com/join. But whether it's BIS or anywhere else you support in Illinois, this is what you got coming your way, because big money in Illinois has decided they're gonna get their goddamn tax cuts, even if they have to blame everyone else in the state for it. and run this politics of destruction.
Let's move on to New York, because something interesting is happening with an actress, and she's getting involved in politics, which I love. Cynthia Nixon was recently getting some recognition at the Human Rights Campaign Gala in New York. And it's because of her work in fighting for equality for the LGBT community. And there are some rumors that she is flirting with the idea of challenging Andrew Cuomo as governor of New York. And what I love about this story is as she goes up there and gives this speech and talks about issues that matter, Andrew Cuomo is in the audience. And she's essentially calling him out on some of his failures in the state of New York. Now, here is some of what she had to say. We have to be more than the anti-Trump party, speaking about Democrats. In 2018, we don't just need to elect more Democrats, we also need better Democrats.
Damn.
She called on the Democratic Party nationally to pay more attention to income inequality and abandon the big money interests that fund its campaigns.
Andrew Cuomo.
So again, yes, Andrew Cuomo is there, and they both have their moment to speak. And she's saying all these things, and I'll tell you what Andrew Cuomo decided to talk about later. But she also said the following: if we had bluer Democrats, New York wouldn't have the worst inequality in the country. For all the pride that we take here in being such a blue state, New York has the single worst income inequality of any state in the country. How can we know this fact and let it stand without actively working to change it? So that's what she wanted to talk about. Later, Andrew Cuomo came up and talked about social issues, which is fair. It's a Human Rights Campaign gala. So he talked about the LGBT community. And look, I think those are issues that are important to talk about. But I think far too often we see corporatist Democrats focus on those issues in an effort to kind of distract on the income inequality issue. And
And oftentimes those corporate Democrats will hide behind minorities, members who happen to be either women or minority from a minority group ethnically, or LGBT members. So here's Cynthia Nixon going, yeah, okay, I'm part of the LGBT community, but I also happen to be a progressive. Why can't we have both? Don't hide, okay? Just call it what it is. And Andrew Cuomo is one of the biggest corporate Democrats there is in the country. New York, for all their blueness, has the worst voter suppression laws in the country, arguably worse than some of the worst southern states. You have to register 6 months before any election. It's an effort to keep incumbents in power, because by the time you find out about who's opposing an incumbent, it's already too late. You had to have registered months ago. And they think they're being cute. It's not cute, it's voter suppression. And if you're a progressive, you should hate it under any and all circumstances. You should want as many people to vote as possible, including in Democratic primaries. So if, I'm not enamored by celebrities. So when people talk about The Rock or Oprah, I don't have any interest. On the other hand, if you're going to be independent and you're going to push for a progressive agenda, then bless your heart. In fact, a good example was in Kentucky, Ashley Judd was thinking of running. Again, I'm not starry-eyed about that. I got to find out what her positions are. But when she started talking about her positions, they were actually excellent.
Right.
But so what did the Democratic Party do? Now, normally they love rich people. That's their #1 litmus test. How much money do you have, and how much money do the people you know have? But in the case of Ashley Judd, no. Turned out she was too progressive. So they were geniuses and backed Alison Lundgren Grimes because she was an establishment candidate, and she knew what she was doing, and she was a standard politician. And she spoke like a standard politician, and she got mauled like a standard Democratic politician. Mitch McConnell was vulnerable. He was on the ropes. He was even arguing his ads in favor of Kentucky's version of Obamacare because he knew he was on the ropes. And they let him off the hook because they went with an establishment Democrat. Doesn't get any more establishment than Andrew Cuomo. So if there's a real progressive challenging him, celebrity, great. Right?
Yeah, right. And
have at it, Hoss.
For me, the celebrity component of it doesn't matter at all unless I know what their policy positions are. And I think, with the whole Oprah thing, and I said this when we covered the story after her speech, the Democrats that were supportive of her were just enamored by the fact that she gave this amazing speech and that, we're so tired of Trump that anything seems like it would be better. But no one knows what her policy positions are, right? With Cynthia Nixon, she's making it very clear what her policy proposals are. And so the celebrity part of it is good in that she already has name recognition that's so incredibly valuable when you're going after an incumbent like Andrew Cuomo. So look, I don't know whether or not she's gonna go forward with it. Again, she's flirting with the idea and these are just rumors. But based on what she was saying during that speech, it seems like it's a serious consideration for her.
For progressives, you're a celebrity, but you have progressive ideas, great. You're a non-celebrity, you got progressive ideas, great, we love it. All we care about is policy. We wanna bring real change for the American people. For Democratic politicians, you're a celebrity and you will go along with the establishment, wonderful. You're a celebrity and you have actual progressive ideas. Susan Sarandon, John Cusack, Rosario Dawson, Shailene Woodley, apparently Cynthia Nixon, Ashley Judd. No. Oh, you're ruining it. Where's the unity? Get back in line, get back in line. And they get particularly freaked out because celebrities have money. So they don't need the DNC's money or the DCCC's money or the Governors Association for the Democrats' money. So they're like, no, not that. Because what if they were to actually argue to take money out of politics? Then those Democratic consultants wouldn't make as much money. And to them, that's the #1 problem.
Yeah.
So if Cynthia Nixon is anywhere as progressive as those comments indicate, run, Cynthia, run. Okay, now we're out of time, guys, but we got a lot of great show ahead for you guys. In the post game, Anna and I will talk a little bit more about my New Orleans trip.
Yeah.
Dozens of people came up to me. I talked a little bit in the first hour about some of the conservatives, but I want to talk about some of the progressives who came up to me as well, because I always learn from those trips and I love that. So tytnetwork.com/join to become a member. Check out the post game. But first, Rebel headquarters. That's free to everybody. And Don Siegelman will be on. He was former governor of Alabama who got railroaded into jail. We'll talk to him. That's an amazing story, and there's a new movie out about it. And then at 6 o'clock, live for the members, and then we'll put it up for everybody as soon as we can later. Kyle Kulinski and I will talk about Russia. We have a different perception of the issue, and I think it's going to be a fascinating conversation. All right, guys. Bye-bye. All right, welcome to Rebel Headquarters. I do want to give you one tweet from the end of the Young Turks show. James writes in, the right hates when the left yells Nazi, but what do we do when actual Nazis represent the party and no one else challenges him, as is the case in a district in Illinois that we told you about, where Arthur Jones, a neo-Nazi who openly questions the Holocaust, is running in that seat, and no other Republican will challenge him. Okay, now, we're going to do something unique on Rebel Headquarters today. We're going to dedicate the whole show to one guest because I think it is a really interesting topic worthy of your consideration. So let me introduce that guest. Don Siegelman is the former governor of Alabama. He was put into prison by a cabal that we believe included Karl Rove. I believe and I said at the time that you were a political prisoner in America. It is an amazing story. Now there's a movie out on Amazon and iTunes called Atticus versus the Architect that shows that movie. Governor Siegelman, great to have you back on the TYT network.
Well, it's good to be with you. Thank you very much. And it's been a while, but it wasn't my fault. You know? That
is certainly true. Governor was just released on February 8th of 2017. Governor Siegelman, let's go all the way to the beginning for people who haven't heard the story. So you were an enormously popular governor in Alabama, of all places, a Democratic governor who polled really well in Alabama, and the Republicans down there were not fond of you, and they couldn't figure out a way to stop you. So they did come up with something, and what was that?
Well, it wasn't at the ballot box at first. It was Karl Rove's client who started the investigation, the state attorney general, and it was later kicked into high gear by Karl Rove's business partner's wife, who had been appointed as the U.S. attorney by George W. Bush. It was funded by Jack Abramoff, who I call Karl Rove's bag man. Some $20 million was pumped into Alabama by through Abramoff, the Christian Coalition, and the Americans Taxpayers Reform, Grover Norquist group. So they funneled all this money in to defeat me and to defeat my education lottery proposal. The proposal would have damaged the Choctaw Indians' gaming monopoly in the Southeast, but the political conspiracy and the economic conspiracy came together. The election in 2002, my re-election in 2002, was stolen by Karl Rove's client, the Attorney General of Alabama, who certified some false ballots before it was legally allowable, and with that we were thrown into a situation where my request for a hand count was impossible. So that took us to a point when I was seeking re-election in 2000. I was going into 2006, beginning
Governor, before we go to 2006 and the charge they brought against you, I want to stay on that election you characterized as stolen for a second. So I know that they certified the vote a couple of days in advance of when they were supposed to, and they wouldn't let anyone look at the ballots that you thought had been played around with. But why did you think that there was impropriety there? And then I'm curious, do those ballots still exist somewhere? I know that the Republicans in Alabama won't let anybody see them, but are they there somewhere?
I'm sorry, was who there somewhere? I couldn't hear you.
The ballots that might have had impropriety back in the election, they say you lost. I mean, for those of you who don't know, and you'll see it in the movie, but Governor Siegelman was coming out to accept his victory when all of a sudden they said, oh no, some votes have changed in a particular county, and they wouldn't let anybody see those votes. They just claimed they were changed and then said he had lost. So
yeah, so the day of the election in 2002, We went to bed that night after CNN and CBS and NBC had all declared that I had won the election, and the votes had been tallied. All of the votes had been reported, and there was one county, Baldwin County, that reported late. But even though I lost the county, I won it by enough to swing the election my way. At around 4 o'clock in the morning, I was awakened by security who told me that I was needed back at the office, that something was happening with the votes in Baldwin County. When I got to the office, I was told that a new set of election results had been produced after midnight, after everybody had been sent home, after the news media and the representatives from the political parties had left the courthouse. A new set of numbers was immediately produced some 4 or 5 minutes later, where I had my vote had been diminished by some 6,000 ballots and 6,000 votes, and those were simply given to my opponent. It should be, of course, noted that my opponent was supported by Abramoff and Ralph Reed and Karl Rove and the whole, all these folks that we've been talking about. So when we realized that the election, something had happened, they said it was a computer glitch in one precinct, in one voting place. There were 6,000 votes that had shifted, but the governor's race was the only race where the votes, that those missing votes had impacted. It didn't impact a single down ballot position. So there were no votes taken from the lieutenant governor or attorney general or anybody else, just from the governor's race. So we knew there was, something was wrong. It could not be right. So we asked for a hand recount simply of that one precinct. And that was when Karl Rove's client stepped in, seized the ballots, seized the election returns, took them to Montgomery and certified the set of ballots which we were questioning, and which everyone now concludes was a set of numbers which were hacked. One of the players in Alabama who went to work immediately for the Tom DeLay and Jack Abramoff's company, the Alexandria Group, was on Bob Riley's staff, my opponent's staff, and he claimed credit for finding the votes to swing the election to his boss, Congressman Riley.
So do those ballots still exist somewhere, locked up in a safe somewhere in Alabama?
No one seems to know where those ballots went after they were seized by the Attorney General. So they haven't been counted, and nobody knows where they are.
And Governor, Jack Abramoff was later convicted on corruption charges on separate matters. So he came out of prison and said he was a reform man and he's fighting to end the corruption in politics. Do you believe the reform Jack Abramoff?
Well, I believe that and the answer is no. I don't believe everything. I think he has selective memory. Although he did admit on camera that they spent $20 million to defeat me and that I had to be stopped because I was a threat to their client. So, at least he was partially truthful in that regard. But clearly, this was a political hit because they simply couldn't beat me at fair and square at the polls.
Okay, now let's head back to 2006. So you're thinking of running for re-election, logically so under these circumstances, and what happens next?
Well, in 2003, there were some political surveys, both from the Mobile Register and the Birmingham News, both of which showed that in a head-to-head contest with my opponent, the then incumbent Bob Riley, that I would beat him nearly 2-1. It was at that point that the chairman of the Republican Party was summoned to Washington to meet with Jeff Sessions, to see under what parameters Jeff Sessions might be the Republican nominee to run against me in 2006. It was Jeff Sessions, retired FBI agents, not the FBI, that investigated and built the two cases against me. One of his agents was named Bill Long, the other Jack Brennan. They spent years doing nothing but investigating and trying to find some way to bring some charges against me. So even though Sessions ended up not running in 2006, it was his agents that built the case. And of course, the first case was in 2004. It was brought on the last day of a 5-year statute. And the judge who was the presiding judge, who had been on the bench for nearly 30 years, said it was the most unfounded criminal case over which he had presided in his entire judicial career. The second case was brought. I was brought to trial 1 month before the re-election in 2006 by the U.S. attorney whose husband was the campaign manager for my opponent, Mr. Riley.
That alone right there is such a preposterous conflict of interest that how could they have allowed that to continue?
Well, we have been asking since 2006 for the records of the Department of Justice, which dealt with our request for this prosecutor to be recused because her husband was being paid to defeat me. We were told that David Margolis, the Deputy Attorney General, had approved her going forward in the case, saying that there was no conflict, no conflict in fact. But she said, the U.S. Attorney said she was going to recuse, even though she didn't have to. But we've been asking for those records now since 2006 and still haven't seen them. What did come to light, however, in a secret Department of Justice memo or letter that was sent to the House Judiciary Committee under seal, which still is under seal, but was brought to light by the Project on Governmental Oversight about 2 years ago. In the letter, the government admits that the lead prosecutor in my case was emailing my opponent's son and campaign manager, giving them updates on the investigation and my prosecution. It is clearly this says that this was a political prosecution. The lead prosecutor was emailing my opponent's son, giving him updates on the investigation, saying that he was frustrated because it wasn't moving along fast enough, and that he and a group of like-minded conservative prosecutors were committed to doing their job, meaning to get me. So we're still fighting in federal court now in Birmingham, Alabama, to get those documents released.
So the equivalent of that would be the lead prosecutor against Donald Trump, which would be Robert Mueller, if he was continually updating Chelsea Clinton with how the prosecution of Donald Trump was going. Could you imagine what the Republican reaction to that would be?
Yeah. We've seen the Republican reaction to in this recent memo that they've released. But yes, if the same thing, if the shoe was on the other foot, as they say, they would be screaming loudly for criminal justice reform. And there's some things that really should be done. And maybe this is a good time to talk about that. But prosecutors and investigators in the United States are free to twist arms, to cajole and to pressure witnesses to say what the prosecutors want them to say, prosecutors are free to lie. They're free to get witnesses to change their testimony to fit what it is that the prosecutors want to have to make a conviction, to get a conviction, because there is no checks and balances. There's no accountability. There's no way to hold prosecutors and investigators accountable for intentional and willful misconduct, because they are generally immune from civil liability. Prosecutors are absolutely immune unless there is some memo that they've written saying that they are knowingly presenting false testimony. But the solution to this is fairly simple. In fact, President Obama, when he was a senator, proposed that all interviews with targets and witnesses be recorded, and those recordings be turned over to the defense. The reason for that would be to show, if prosecutors were trying to twist arms, or if they were threatening a witness by, saying, hey, we're going to go after your wife or your husband or your father or mother, your child, if you don't, change your testimony, they would be constrained from making those kinds of threats if they were, being videoed and those videos made available to the defense. Also, the defense could see the progression and changing of a person's testimony if every interview was recorded. So it's go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask about President Obama as well, because you just mentioned him there. Now, look, if I thought this was a real case of corruption, I'd be furious and completely opposed to Governor Siegelman. And it's not like I don't know how to oppose Democrats. So, but you have to understand the context. In October 2015, more than 100 former attorney generals and officials, both Democrats and Republicans, said that his prosecution was marred by prosecutorial misconduct, the kind of misconduct that he was just referring to there. So it's not just Democrats, even Republican attorney generals were like, this is outrageous, what happened to Governor Siegelman. So now, knowing all that, I see it, and I interviewed you before, and I saw the evidence back then. Do you think that President Obama should have done more to help you in your case? Not in any wrong way, but to simply ask for justice?
Well, the difficulty was that David Margolis, who was the #2 man in the Justice Department, the highest ranking civil servant, he had been there longer than anyone else. He recently passed away, but Margolis was the one who approved the charging decisions. He was the one who allowed Laura Canary, even though her husband was working for my opponent, to continue being involved in the case by saying that there was no actual conflict. When a whistleblower came forward and gave testimony to Eric Holder that she had, a Department of Justice employee came forward giving testimony that she had witnessed the prosecution and the investigators pressuring and cajoling their key witness to remember things he clearly did not recall. She was fired by Margolis. And so it was, and also keep in mind that Margolis was involved in the firing of the U.S. attorneys back in 2006, I believe it was, David Iglesias and all of those guys. And he was also involved in replacing them. He went to the White House to work on the political side to help pick the people to go back into these U.S. attorney slots. These people who were fired because they wouldn't do Karl Rove's political bidding. So Margolis was so involved in this case that, and he is the guy that was also in charge of reviewing prosecutorial allegations of prosecutorial misconduct. So, this guy was in the catbird seat. He wasn't gonna, it was the fox guarding the hen house, or however you want to say it. So I'm not sure to what extent Eric Holder and President Trump could be held responsible for the misconduct or not alleviating the misconduct, because I don't know to what extent they actually became aware of the misconduct. Yeah. Now, the independent documentary, which you mentioned earlier, places some blame on Eric Holder because the Covington and Burling, the firm that he worked for, represented Karl Rove. They represented Karl Rove in the matter of the firing of the U.S. attorney, and also in the allegations that the House Judiciary Committee made that there was selective prosecution and misconduct in my case. And they also represented Rove when the 20 million emails went missing. So Eric Holder's law firm, if not Eric Holder himself, had some connection with Karl Rove.
Yeah, and the movie is, of course, Atticus versus the Architect, and you can get it at atticusvthearchitect.com. It's on Amazon and iTunes as well to get the whole story. And look, you had a funny Freudian slip in there. You said President Trump when you meant President Obama, but perhaps telling in that slip. No, I give them no quarter. So you've got a leftover Republican in Margolis who's complicit in some of the worst decisions in the Bush administration. And my guess is that Holder and Obama, as usual, went, well, if we act and to actually see if there was impropriety here, the Republicans will yell at us. So let's not do it. That's usually their modus operandi.
Yeah, and I think that they were running scared from the time he dropped his hand from taking the oath of office when he said, we're going to look forward, not backward, which meant, we're not going to investigate why we went into war under false pretenses. We're not going to investigate or hold responsible those people who engaged in torture, and we're not going to look at past stolen elections or worry about how to prevent elections from being stolen in the future. I was very disappointed in the fact that they were not going to look at not just my case, but also hold those people accountable for the misdeeds that they did during the Iraq and Afghan war.
So we're running short on time, so I did want to ask you one other thing. We recently had two corruption cases, Governor McDonnell, who's a Republican in Virginia, and Senator Menendez, who's a Democrat in New Jersey. How would you compare your case of what they charged was corruption compared to those other cases?
Well, in my case, there was no allegation that I benefited by a single penny. There was no allegations that I got, gifts or trips or, spending sprees or whatever, or even campaign contributions to my campaign. I was convicted of bribery because I was pushing this education lottery referendum, which, of course, Jack Abramoff and his folks were on the other side of. And I had solicited, money for television ads and all the other stuff that goes in trying to get a referendum passed by the people. And I had reappointed one of the donors to a board on which he had been appointed by 3 previous governors. There was no allegation of a quid pro quo, much less an explicit one. But the way they proved their case or got the jury to buy into their case was by twisting the arm of this one witness, Nick Bailey, who has later sort of recanted, but calling his own testimony BS. But anyway, they pressured him because of his sexual orientation and threatened to expose that to the inmates in Atlanta if he didn't cooperate. They interviewed him over 70 times before he finally broke and just said, tell me what you want me to say. And he did. And but even with that, they still did not show that there was any kind of allegation, or they didn't allege that there was an explicit or an express quid pro quo.
In the case of McDonald, he took an overwhelming number of gifts, and he was convicted, and a jury did that rather easily. But the Supreme Court decided, okay, that kind of corruption where you actually take gifts from lobbyists and then do what they tell you to do is fine. But Governor Siegelman, what he did is not fine and deserves to be in prison. It is maddening. I think this entire system is built on corruption, and these campaign money going to the coffers of the politicians and into dark money and independent expenditures. I think it's a crime against our democracy. But in the case of Governor Siegelman, he didn't even get campaign contributions, let alone any actual gifts like Governor McDonald. Yet he went to prison and the others didn't. So
I'm not here to judge Menendez or Governor McDonald's actions, but clearly there's a difference. I didn't get $1,500 hotel rooms, and I wasn't involved in soliciting, whatever. It was a clear case of the government wanting to put me in prison, and they did. Interesting. They not only had the prosecutor, whose husband was my opponent's campaign manager. They not only had the attorney general, who was Karl Rove's client. They not only had Jack Abramoff, who pumped $20 million into the state to defeat me, but they also had the judge. Jeff Sessions had nominated this guy back in 2002 to serve on the federal bench. And it was at that time that he was a district attorney before he went on the federal bench. And I had discovered that he had basically built the state retirement system out of $300,000 to reward his chief investigator. It went to court, and the court ruled that Fuller had acted improperly, and that $300,000 was put back into the state retirement system. It was a huge embarrassment for this judge who was new to the federal bench. Well, Judge Mark Fuller, who should have recused himself, did not, and instead used that opportunity at trial to punish me for what he perceived was a political act back in 2002. Another interesting point about Jeff Sessions, in 2003, when Bill Pryor, Karl Rove's client, was nominated by Sessions to go on the federal bench in Atlanta as part of the 11th Circuit, Jeff made the comment publicly that he would have gotten Bill on the bench earlier, but they needed a Republican governor in place first. This was right after right after Bill Pryor had participated in the illegal certification of the 2002 elections.
Yeah, I think the pattern is clear. I believe there was corruption in Alabama. It just wasn't done by you, it was done to you. Everybody check out Atticus versus the Architect. We'll have a link down below, of course, as well, that you can click on. And Governor Don Siegelman, pleasure to have you back with us, both in Free Society and here at the TYT Network.
Well, I appreciate it, and I certainly appreciate the good work that you guys do. You bring up a lot of topics that nobody else is willing to talk about, and when you do, there's a great deal of clarity in what you say and how you present it. So thank you.
Thank you, Governor. All right, we're out of time here, guys. Quick break, and then for the members, we will come back with a post game with Anna, talk about some of the folks that I ran into down in New Orleans. And we'll do that for all the members, of course. To be a member, tytnetwork.com/join. All right, we'll be right back.